Well, good afternoon, everyone. Really appreciate your patience. We've had a few technical issues here, but I think we've got most of them resolved. And again, thank you so much for hanging out with us this afternoon, depending on where you're at. If you are in Hawaii, good morning. Of course, if you're in Hawaii, you should be at the beach, not listening to us. But welcome to the latest installment of the ITA Officiating Department Continuing Education Series, and this is one that's kind of near and dear to me. The ITA Coaches Panel. Where we're going to have a couple coaches on today to discuss, to answer some questions that we've been given out. And so thank you so much, everyone, for joining us today. Our moderators are myself, Darren Potke, talking to you from Marietta, Georgia. And we also have Anthony Montero from Southern California. Anthony, good afternoon.
Good afternoon, Darren. Thank you. And welcome, everyone.
Okay, so we're very blessed today to have a couple different coaches on the line with us today. We're still trying to get Amy Bryan on, the head women's tennis coach at Emory, so she's actually not currently on today, at least at this point, but we're trying to do the best to get her on here. But we have Allison Ojeda, the head women's tennis coach at the University of Tennessee. Allison, good afternoon. If she can hear us. Okay, and well, we know Peter Wright we can hear. Peter Wright is the men's tennis coach at Cal Berkeley. Peter, good afternoon.
Hi, Darren. Hi, Anthony. Hello, everybody.
And Peter, give a little background on Peter. Peter is in his 27th season at Cal with over 380 wins. He's got multiple ITA Regional and Pac-12 Coach of the Year awards. Peter was also named the ITA Meritorious Service Award winner in 2017. Member of the Ireland Davis Cup team and captain from 95 to 2003, head coach also of their Olympic team. And he's also in the USTA NorCal Hall of Fame. Peter, when I went to Dublin, I was looking for your statue. I couldn't find it.
You should have been in one of the bars looking for it, Darren. It wouldn't be on the courts.
But Peter's had a long, great success at Cal. Tremendous job he does, and of course a great academic school, so he balances academics and athletics very well. So Peter, thank you for joining us.
Thank you.
Do we have Allison back on, Anthony?
I think Allison can hear us. I don't know if we have her audio yet. She's working on it.
Okay, well, we're gonna start here, and once we get hopefully our two distinguished ladies on, we'll keep going. But the first question we had, and Peter, I'd like to ask you this, of course, is what's the most important positive quality you look for? And I'm going to ask you from a chair umpire perspective and then a referee perspective, but maybe you can share with us some thoughts on a positive quality you look for in a chair umpire.
You know, we're always looking. Well, I'll start with a chair umpire. That's all right. You know, we're always looking for somebody who, when they're running the match, I like someone who's confident but not cocky, who is able to communicate with the players in a positive way, but not overly communicative either, so not carrying on a big conversation. But I think really that when our officials come in, when they have the uniform on, when they look professional, and they handle themselves in a very professional manner with their communications, I find that to be a great way of starting a match, and just everyone having their role. Our officials, as they look professional, present themselves to the players in a professional manner. I think that's really helpful to start a match.
That's really interesting. Relaford Sanders, who's one of our top officials in the country, always has a good advice for other officials. He says, you know, I like to answer questions that are asked of me. I don't like to generate unnecessary conversation. Is that what you were talking about in terms of not talking too much out there?
Absolutely, absolutely. Hey, especially in a high tension environment where people are looking for an advantage or anything else, or looking for favoritism one side or the other. So yeah, no, I find that the best officials probably do respond to communication, but maybe don't initiate that much.
Great. Well, thanks for that answer. Let's switch hats here, and maybe you can give us some thoughts what you look for as a positive quality in a referee.
Well, typically we'll deal with the referee be a pre-match, going over any of the ground rules. So somebody who's organized and has a checklist and goes through things at that stage. And then the other time after that, when we really deal with the referee, is when we have some kind of dispute on court. And the positive qualities of a referee coming out usually are that they start with their chair official or whoever officials on the court, have a conversation with them. And then they listen to the other coaches or the other people involved, and then come to a conclusion. So I find that, again, having a steady hand and calming things down a little bit, and then just making it a process that's not going to take a long time, but they're process oriented and people understand the process as they're going through it. It's just helpful and it's encouraging, rather than somebody who comes out to make an instant decision, or it hasn't heard from the constituent parties as to what their point of view might be before they make a final judgment.
Yeah, that's always tricky as a referee when you get called to court, over a dispute, shall we say. Obviously the first person we want to talk to is our chair umpire or rover, but then we want to make sure we give the players enough chance to state both sides to state their case, and then make a decision and move on. So that's really good advice. Thank you, Peter. Amy Bryan has joined us, I hope. Amy, can you hear us?
Yeah, I'm here.
Great. Well, Amy, we're going to go back to the previous slide. Really appreciate you joining us today. Those of you that don't know Amy is in her 20th season as the head coach at Emory University, which is a perennial Division III power here in Atlanta, great academic school as well. Amy was the first female in NCAA history at any level to win the national team championship, both as a coach and a player. I think there's been one or two more subsequent to you, but you were the first, so congratulations to you on that. She's with 20 seasons, over 400 wins, 12 appearances in the national championship match, 6 national championships as a team, 6 individual singles and 4 doubles national championships. And Anthony, that's 6 more than I've won.
Thanks, Darren.
Is in the Emory Sports Hall of Fame. The interesting thing is all of our panelists today are in a Hall of Fame. And Anthony, are you in any Hall of Fame? Because I'm not. Obviously, that's why we're sitting on this side of the table. But Amy, I really appreciate you joining us today. And some of our officials probably don't know much about Division III or your program at all. But I'm going to ask you, you probably have you have officials, roving umpires.
Correct.
So what would be the most important positive quality you look for in a roving umpire?
I look for a roving umpire that stays on the court. Even though they're roving, I'd like them to be roving from court to court, not outside the court. I like them to be engaged in the match, and know what's going on all 6 courts as much as possible. It's the roving umpires that kind of hang outside the fence and wait to be called. And they really just don't have a finger on the pulse of what's going on in the match, because they're not inside the fence on the court, moving from court to court. So they don't really know what the whole dynamic is in the match and how to intervene when necessary. So that engagement piece is really important for us with a roving umpire.
Yeah, it's a good point. When we talk about roving, kind of figuring out where maybe the issues are going to be, looking at what the score is in the match or in the team match. So that's something that people learn to do, and it's very important as roving umpire. So thank you for that.
Yep.
Anthony, were we able to get Allison?
Allison can hear us. Let's see if we can hear her. Allison, you want to try talking and maybe? I think we're still having audio problems there.
Okay. That's okay. We'll move on. Hopefully we'll get her going. This, of course, we tested everything, it worked perfectly, and then it never does when we really need it. But anyway, we'll go back to Peter. Maybe a negative quality you've observed in IT official that has caused a conflict or problem. Obviously, we don't need any names or any specific cases, but do you have something that maybe is a turnoff for you? with officials?
Yeah, no, and actually, I would just before I move on, Amy's points were really positive about, because we have roving umpires in D1 matches, D1 tournaments, and all throughout. One thing I just add to what she said, which was perfect, was having an awareness of what's going on in the courts. When it gets to a tiebreaker, when it gets to that, when we have a roving official who comes out and knows that it's a tiebreaker, that's really a positive quality, and not walking away from that in the middle of it at 5-3 in the tiebreaker, turning around to do something else. So that awareness is really important. So then moving to the next question of negative quality, I think sometimes one of the qualities that I think most coaches struggle with is an official who injects themselves into a match that they probably, for whatever reason, shouldn't be touching something, whether it's a line call or how they communicate. So, a negative quality I've found is sometimes a chair umpire who is absolutely right on every single call, and this is it's I made the call, so it's right. That's not really necessarily true. And so I find that working with people with that huge ego in the chair can often be a turnoff, and just as much as someone who's not willing to touch any calls at all. And that may be the worst of all, who once everybody knows this person will never overrule a call. So I guess not doing your job is a negative quality that I've seen, and then overcooking the job is another way that I think the best officials I've worked with have a way of de-escalating, and the worst officials I've worked with will take a challenging situation and make it even worse.
Yeah, let's bring the temperature down. Yeah, Amy, you want anything to add on that? Go ahead.
Yeah, I think one quality that really doesn't work for us is the over talkative umpires, like the ones that want to talk to the players while they're competing to tell them, ooh, that was a nice shot, or you really played that point well, but you just didn't hit the right shot at the end, or whatever. They just feel like they have to talk it out with the players. Players don't want to talk. The players need to focus. They need to work, they need to focus on their match, and they're not there to make friends with the umpires, and the umpires shouldn't be there to make friends with them. So everyone's got their jobs that they need to do, and they need to stay in their lanes, kind of thing. So I think that's one of the things we really struggle with is the over friendly umpire.
Yeah, we have a saying, at least for like pre-matches, the players aren't listening after 2, maybe 3 sentences at the most.
Right.
So say what you got to say in those 3 sentences and move on. Particularly players at this level, they don't need to know certain things; they already know it. So.
No. Yep. I was going to add on to that. Officials have the responsibility, obviously, of getting the balls ready and making sure that the nets are the right height, single sticks are in. But there's a time and a place for that as well. And if the match is, there's two matches on, and we have 2 officials there, and one official decides, I can step away and take care of cleaning up the courts, like that's not really the priority for an official. The priority is to keep an eye on the match and make sure things are being managed, especially if the match is, come down to the wire. So I think that those types of duties, we need to, they could be prioritized in an official's head so that, they can wait.
Yeah, excellent point. You're in a tiebreak to decide the doubles point or points, and we got to get the single sticks up on number 6. That's more important. So.
Right.
Exactly. Anthony, anything you'd like to add on that?
No, I thought those were all great comments.
Okay. We can just have Allison maybe type in some of her thoughts, and we'll pass those on. If she has any, be happy to entertain those. And Anthony, you can interject when you need to for that. So we're going to move on here. And this is maybe a little bit more for Peter, because this hasn't really made its way to Division III tennis yet, is the concept of the far side linesperson. become certainly a lot more popular over the last couple of years, particularly now with the NCAA and the team event doing it, especially during the doubles. Peter, your thoughts, what's been in your experience with this procedure? And maybe if you have an opinion, if you don't, it's perfectly fine, but maybe just simply your experience or what it brings to the match. So
it's been a really fascinating journey learning about this, because on the surface of it, who doesn't want another official out on the court calling a line on the far sideline, which is a tough one for a chair umpire to handle. The frustrating part for me was that I heard from some officials that, and I guess this is true, but it was just hard for me to believe that a chair umpire isn't necessarily trained to call lines. And so to a tennis coach, that blows your mind. You're like, I'm sorry, excuse me. And no, there's a set of skills that chair umpires have, and there's a set of skills that line umpires have, and they're different sets, and they're not necessarily part of the same set of skills that everybody brings when they come to the court. So it was a little odd for me to hear that, and I would still expect someone standing on a line who's a trained official, whether they're trained as a chair or not, to be able to make a reasonable call. But I've come to understand that those skill sets are different, and that people are not trained to do both. And I'm not exactly sure why they're not trained to do both, but maybe you could elucidate me on that.
yeah, probably another time and place for that, but that is correct. I know, particularly in your conference, when this started being brought up around the country, there was some resistance because a lot of the coaches in the Pac-12 have played at basically the highest level of the game or coached, you being one, having been a Davis Cup captain. And when it was explained to you, do you really want somebody standing out there who's never called a professional line in their life? Oh, no, we don't want that. Now, I think it's fair to say now the NCAA's adopted it. Most coaches want to do what the NCAA is doing in their matches. We did it at Ojai last year. It worked fine. Do you feel it's brought? Has it been a positive in matches, Peter, for you guys? Or
I think so. I think so. I think if to go back to your question, would I want somebody sitting in the chair who's never called a line in their life? Probably not, if you ask me that question. But I do think that having an official on the far sideline is kind of similar to having video review. I think if a player thought they might be able to take advantage of a call, they're less likely to do so if there's someone standing right there on the line. And the same thing applies if there's a video review in play. You just see fewer, should we say, opportunistic line calls being made.
Right, more of a deterrent.
Yeah, absolutely.
Hey, Darren, sorry to interrupt, but I think Allison's mic is up and running, and so we can test if you want to test it out with her.
Okay. Hey guys, can you hear me?
Of course. Great.
Oh yes, good to hear your voice, Allison.
Well, thanks, Allison.
Yeah, thank you.
Sorry for the technical issues. So I'm just going to embarrass you a little bit. This is Allison Ojeda, head women's tennis coach, University of Tennessee in Knoxville. She's in her 4th season, was the Ohio Valley Region Coach of the Year in 2019. Does a tremendous job with community service outreach. In fact, won the ITA Community Service
Sorry,
Award.
I got a little crazy with that. Sorry. I did it in a bunch of different places.
I think that was my wife. Sorry about that. But not only was she a great coach, but she was a great player at Tennessee. Actually helped Tennessee reach the semifinals of the NCAAs as the team captain in 2002. And Anthony, another Hall of Famer, she was inducted into the National Hispanic Sports Hall of Fame. So again, that's more people in Hall of Fames that were not. So Allison, appreciate you joining today. And maybe you can give your opinion on this question or your thoughts on the far side linesperson. Go ahead.
Yeah, well, first of all, thanks for having me. I agree with Peter. I think that anytime you can have an official on the far sideline, I think it helps. These guys are in tough situations. They want to do whatever they can to win for a team. And I don't ever think that somebody's going to cheat on purpose. But with that said, when you have somebody sitting there monitoring it, I think you tend to go with the right call.
And Allison, why don't we bring you into the 2 previous questions? Why don't we do it this way? why don't you tell us one thing in your area of the country that you think officials do well and one thing that they need to improve on?
Yeah, in our area of the country, overall, I do think most of our officials do have previous experience. So I don't see too many brand new officials. And that's always good. I think one thing we can continue to do a better job of is when you have a head official who sets the tone at the beginning of a match and just says, here's the way this match is going to work out. And I'm not going to tolerate any arguments. And I think that if Jay just set the tone early, then I think the players tend to listen to that. So I feel like our officials can be a little bit more firm at the beginning of a match.
Okay, interesting. Great. Any positive from, let's say, a chair umpire perspective, Allison, that you've seen?
Yeah, I've seen a
Positive
bunch.
quality?
And we have multiple officials who are outstanding, but Andrew Rogers is one of the best I've seen. Very similar. I don't know how many of you guys have had Anthony on your campus before, but when those guys set the tone right away, when they speak with their student athletes and tell them we expect you guys to make honest calls, then they tend to do that. And if somebody, is constantly questioning something, the more brief the official can be and just, look, it was out, period. No conversation, no, oh, it was close, I'm going to have to go with the opponent's call. I think that they can I think they can help set the tone a lot better.
Great. Well, thanks so much for joining us today. Sorry we had a little technical issue, but you've overcome it like everything else. Well done. So, coaches, we solicited some questions from the folks that were going to be on this webinar. So the next couple ones are actually from the field. Some of the ones we picked out, and then if there's time, we'll open it up for questions amongst the group. But the first one is, we have a critical shortage of officials across the country. Is there anything you could do as a college coach to help with the recruitment of new officials? And maybe I'll start with Amy.
I don't really know how the recruiting process works now, but something that we can probably do as coaches, I mean, we have such vast alumni networks, and they're all people that are interested in tennis, and who knows, maybe they've thought about being an umpire or not, but most of my parents and alums have been around tennis their whole life, and that it wouldn't be a wild path for them to take. It's plausible. So, I'd be willing to send out information to my network of folks, and obviously post things on Facebook and Instagram as well, if that helped.
Great. Yes, that would be well received. I know it's, especially with the players you have now, one of the ways you can sell it is, it's a way to stay in the game.
Yeah.
That you love. So Peter, Allison, you anything to add on that question?
Yeah, I mean, I think that we're starting to pay officials pretty good amount. So I think that if we could just make the community aware of the fact that they can make an extra $300 to $600 easily on a weekend and not leave, a 2-hour radius of their town, then I think you would have a lot more interest.
Okay, Peter, any thoughts?
Yeah, I look at the college campuses and see, again, keeping people in the game, and some of the younger people, I wonder, I go back and forth between how big a conflict of interest it is to have someone who is from a university and then out there, chairing a match or being a roving official. And that may be too close, and it may be too much of a conflict of interest. But, one trend I do see is, as we see more and more video review around the country, a trained official is a trained official, and if someone were to come off a club team or something else at a university or a nearby university, would that be a conflict? So I think of college students as maybe a good place to start looking at the recruiting process.
Yeah, it's very interesting. Anthony,
yeah, maybe even our club tennis teams.
Yeah, I know. I was at Methodist a few weeks ago with the PTM program doing some workshops for officials, and a few folks were interested there, young people. It was actually very inspiring to see all these young people very excited about staying in the game in some capacity. So it was great. Anthony, anything you'd like to add on that idea?
No, I think that they covered it perfectly.
Okay. Okay, so we touched on this a little bit, but the next question maybe we'll ask is, whether as a roving or chair umpire, what are the coach's expectations for officials calling the far sideline? From the chair, obviously, having to make decisions on that. Peter, do you have a thought on this one?
So the expectations for calling the far sideline for a chair umpire?
Yeah, I mean, there's sometimes there's a myth amongst players that they feel that the chair umpire can't overrule on that line, or coaches feel that way. Do you feel that way, or?
No, I don't feel that way at all. I mean, I think that it's obviously it's not. Well, sometimes the near sideline isn't that easy to call either. But I think that it's really more how you call the match. We have some players who sell calls, and it is a challenge for someone in the chair with or without experience. I would say that if a chair umpire or a roving official says, I'm not going to touch the far sideline, and those words come out of their mouth, wow, that sounds like it's open season maybe for some opportunistic line calls on that side. So
you just
I would.
the court.
Yeah, exactly.
Right. Okay. Interesting. Great. Allison or Amy, any thoughts on this one, or?
Yeah, I've got the same thought. I feel like if an official's in the chair, they can see every line on the court and make a clear and concise call.
Okay.
I don't have anything to add.
Okay, great. Anthony, anything you'd like to add on this one, or a follow-up question?
Nope.
Okay. Okay, another question we got from the field was a good one, is how would the coaches prefer a response from officials when a ball can't be overruled because the official isn't 100% confident the ball was in after an out call? And I think, Allison, I'm going to start with you because I think you've already kind of answered this in a previous question.
Yeah, for me, if they're unsure, I don't want my player to ever hear an official say, I'm not so sure. And there shouldn't be any question in the way that they speak to the student athletes. So I just feel like they should just say, yes, it was in, or no, it was out. And one or the other, no conversation about it. Just keep it simple.
Yeah, I totally agree.
Okay, even if that's not exactly the truth.
I think so, only because what I've seen have happened before is you have officials who are being honest and just say, look, it's too close to call. But then that turns into another argument. Well, if it's too close to call, then if you go back to our rule book, it says that you should give the call the benefit of your opponent. No one's going to do that. So I just feel like it's just so much easier if the official just says it was out.
Right. Peter, any?
Or the other thing, that officials say a lot is, I couldn't see it, or I wasn't looking.
Right.
And I mean, that's the worst response to give to these student athletes, because the first thing out of their mouth is some snarky comment about, well, can you watch my court? Can you look? Can you keep your eyes open? So right. Instead, just saying, yes, it was in, or yes, it was out, or the call stands, simple, and that's it.
Yeah, we talked about this on a roving webinar that, you really only can say, I didn't see it too many. I mean, there really is only maybe, might get away with that once.
Right.
Especially roving. But if that's a consistent answer to a question from a player, then you need to evaluate yourself.
Absolutely.
You're not using correct techniques to be able to watch point ending shots. So, Peter,
yep.
Anything you'd like to add on that?
Yeah, I have maybe a little different perspective on it, okay. But I'm okay with an official saying, I'm not going to touch that call, or I'm going to go with that call on occasion. I think what happens to an official really is when they're so confident on a call that probably everybody else on the court knows they missed, including the player on the appeal. So, when you say, hey, no, that ball was good, and they're confident in it, and pretty much everybody on the court knows the ball was out, then you've lost all credibility. So, I'm one of the people who says, look, if you're 100% sure you're going to overrule this call, like you saw that ball differently than the way it was called, I'm okay with that. I'm also okay with, that one, I'm not going to touch that call. I'm going to go with the player's call there. At least it has a certain amount of certainty, or at least I know that the official had some doubts, but just isn't going to do it because it's just too close to call. And And the worst is when they say, when I'm standing right on the line and they say, no, that ball was, in or out or whatever it was. And I'm like, well, gosh, you just lost a lot of credibility. It's kind of the same way a player loses their credibility when they miss enough line calls. So, so I'm a little bit different. I don't want them to be confident in a bad call if they're not quite sure.
Okay. Anthony, anything, follow-up question or anything you'd like to add?
No, thank you.
Great. Okay. So the next one, we'll give like a quick synopsis of this. Sometimes we have new or less experienced officials kind of giving impression of being new. So what characteristics and behaviors exhibited by officials have the greatest effect on your first impression and overall perceptions of an official's performance? Peter, you want to start with this one? Any cues you see, or I know we've talked about some of them already.
Yeah, I mean, we talked about them a little bit. Someone who's not willing to touch any calls. Somebody who is overly confident in a bad call, or just getting engaged in an inappropriate way in the match. So going with a bad call, or allowing the players to argue too much about a call. So you'll sometimes see an inexperienced official allow a lot of conversation about a disagreement over a call, and allow the conversation to go on and on and on, and not sort of nip it in the bud and say, look, it's time to move on here. We're going to move forwards. So that would be some of the things that I've seen in officials who just haven't had as much experience there. And the other part is, sometimes the difficult calls that we get might be a crowd harassment call. That someone in the chair who hasn't been there before, they go, wow, I'm not sure I really know what to do here. I mean, I know what to do here, but I'm not sure I'm ready to pull the trigger to talk about crowd harassment or anything like that. So it's knowing the job, being able to do the job, and as you say, it's an art. It's not something that you just are really good at. You have to go out and you have to make some mistakes, and you have to get engaged. But I think the worst thing a rookie can do is do nothing and just sit there, and then everybody knows you're a rookie, and you're afraid to touch any call, even the ones that you might be confident in.
Yeah, I'm glad to hear you say that, because I know with a lot of things we learn by screwing it up, right? And hindrance is a classic example. You basically learn how to call hindrance correctly by screwing it up the first time. And we've always done that. We're not expecting it. It happens, and then all of a sudden we're like frozen in the chair or rover. Oh my God, what am I supposed to do? And then it's too late. So very good point. Amy, any follow-up comments on that, or something you look for? Or
well, yeah, something I look for in an official and really makes a good impression on me is when an official is willing to do a little extra. We often will have officials recognize that we're down to the last couple matches, and one official, not anyone in particular, but one official might say to me, is it all right if I take off? You don't, we're roving officials, so you don't really need both of us for this last match or these last couple matches. And I just think, I just think asking to leave early is not a great quality. And then, because there's always something that you can do. There's always some way you can help, and you've been hired for the whole match. So, let's figure it out. And if that means that you're going to watch the far sideline, if there's one match left and you already have a chair, you can go watch the far sideline. I really appreciate it when officials do that. And then the other thing I was going to say too, that kind of leaves more of a negative impression on us is, when officials, the first question that they ask when they get there is, will you be providing lunch?
right.
And,
and where's it coming from? Yeah.
I don't know what the actual like written expectations or rules are for officials, and maybe you can share that, but we're happy to provide lunch if it's an all-day event. That's no problem. But if that's the first thing on your mind when you've been hired to referee a match, like maybe that's the wrong thing for you to be doing. Right. So
yeah, no, but food is important, but it's not the most important thing. So great. Allison, anything you'd like to add?
mean, I agree with everything that they just said. I think that when a rookie in the chair does absolutely nothing, then everyone knows they can walk all over them. And so I don't think that's ever a good thing. I just think that when they start off the match, if they can just be very clear with their expectations, you know, whether it's, I expect you guys to speak in English or make your calls loud, you know, whatever it may be, I think that that just sets a good tone going into the match.
Great. Well, thank you for that. Anthony, anything you'd like to add on this one or follow up?
Yeah, we stress with officials the importance of not making scoring mistakes. And some officials think that perhaps we're just obsessing about something. Could maybe any of you talk, whoever would like to, I mean, I don't know your answers, but does an official making scoring mistakes affect your opinion of him or her during the match? And we're not talking about one, but you know, where it seems to happen 3 or 4 times in a match.
Yeah, that affects me a lot. My first year here, we had a different head official than who we have now. And unfortunately, I'm not sure why, but unfortunately, I felt like a majority of the chairs lost score in a match. And it's, one, it's embarrassing, but two, I mean, I just feel like that's their job, is to get up there and, you know, and keep track of the score and officiate the match. And if they can't do that, then they've lost all confidence in everybody, or from everybody.
Yeah, I mean, I'll say that I appreciate it when an official owns their mistake, doesn't try to hide it, doesn't try to mumble through it, just says correction, you know, 30 all. And if that doesn't get their attention to not make another mistake, and oftentimes once they've made one mistake, I think it just like a player, it gets a little bit mental, and then they're just sort of a little nervous about calling the score. So you sometimes will see the same official do it twice. But overall, if they own it and they pay attention to it, then I'm okay with it. I think it's, but you're right. You know, over time, if 3 times in a match somebody blows the score, they're not focused on the right thing.
Yeah, I think what happens a lot of times in this day and age, you know, we've got these electronic scoreboards and PDAs and all this other stuff, is sometimes we as officials are too focused on those things and trying to get scores up quickly for the crowd, and we lose our focus on what's really important, and it's actually officiate the match. That stuff can wait. It can be your second or third thing you do, but to your point, Peter, sometimes, you know, that's part of the issue, is we're focused on other things in the short term rather than actually officiating the match, and then we end up making more mistakes than we should. So,
I was going to add.
Oh, go ahead, Amy. Sorry.
Oh, sorry. I was going to add one thing that really positively affects our perception of an umpire, and that is when they take the time to pronounce the names of our players correctly. That little thing, again, goes a long way, especially with the diverse teams that we have, and you know, the players having their names called out properly is huge.
Yeah, that's an excellent point. So we don't have too many Smith against Joneses out there.
Correct. Yeah.
Right. Great. Or Wright against Bryant. So, okay, Anthony, anything else on that question?
No, thanks, Chair.
Okay. Okay, we've got one more question from the field, and we got a few extra minutes. Maybe we'll open it up for some other questions, but this is pretty loaded one. And it really only can, if you only want to give one item, it's fine. But what are the top 3 items in your perspective that officials need to improve on? And I think I'll start with Allison. Any thoughts on this?
Gosh, yeah, I think depending on the intensity of the match, we've got some coaches that they don't have a problem saying whatever it is they want to an official. And so I think when an official engages in that conversation, then you're just going to continue to have that the rest of the match. So I feel like, I'm not sure, maybe Anthony can tell us what the best way is for an official to handle that. But I think that if they can just tell the coach, or if they just don't answer the coach, maybe, I'm not sure, whatever Anthony would suggest here, but I don't think it's a good thing when our coaches are going off at officials and the officials are coming back at them.
Anthony, you want to address that?
Yeah, I think what Allison is saying, and I 100% agree, is that, you know, you have tools at your disposal when a coach is acting. I mean, a coach is allowed to be angry at you. I say this all the time, you know, a coach is allowed to be angry at you, a coach is allowed to disagree with you. A coach is not allowed to be unprofessional towards you. And so when a coach is unprofessional towards you, you do have to draw a line in the sand, because it's not going to magically just stop. I've never had a coach just magically, turn around and say, you know what, I'm out of line, I apologize. So I think when that happens, you've got to be willing to give the coach's code of conduct point penalty. But as Peter alluded to in his opening statement, it has to be for legitimate, unprofessional conduct, not the coach disagreed with you, because a coach is allowed to disagree with you. It's just a coach is not allowed to be unprofessional.
Yeah, I think a question we have to ask ourselves, officials, when with coaches, is this something I could put up with for the rest of the match? And if the answer is no, then we have to do something.
All right.
But no, it's a good point. Anything else, Allison, you want to add on that, or any other items?
I mean, gosh, maybe I'm one of the few who feel this way, but I think as a whole, our officials are getting a lot better in college tennis. So I've been happy with the changes that I've seen made.
Yeah, Anthony, make sure we get Allison's name spelled right for that chat we're gonna send her.
Yeah.
We've a lot of people, including everybody on this webinar, including the attendees, have put a lot of effort into trying to better our college officiating. So I really appreciate that. We got a long way to go still, but it's very much appreciated that comment. Amy, maybe one item you see?
Yeah, the only thing that I can say is it would be great if, because we're Division III, our rules are different. Our scoring is different. So it'd be great if officials reviewed the rules before officiating our matches, because it's hard to go from a D1 match to a D2 match to a D3 match when they're all slightly different. So I think it's really important to do your preparation and be ready to work based on the rules that you're going to be presented with.
Yeah, that's a really good point. And Amy knows me pretty well, because I'm usually the referee of the D3 NCAs, and we usually have to go through a cleansing, because we've got, including myself, we've pretty much done nothing but Division I the whole year, and now we're at a Division III championship. And invariably, I get called to court at least once every tournament, and it takes me 5 seconds to realize that the chair umpire has instituted a Division I rule.
Yep.
Into the situation. So yeah, that's a good point. There are some differences. So Anthony, you have a follow-up?
Yeah, I was going to say, and I think Amy raises an excellent point. And then even within the divisions, the gender differences between the rules, because you are often, as an official, sometimes for a double header, the morning is the women, the afternoon is the men's match, or vice versa. And so you have to be up also on the gender differences, because even though you're doing the same division, you want to make sure you don't get, particularly where D1 has a lot of gender differences, you don't want to apply the wrong medical timeout rule, etc. So great point to just make sure you are focused on what you're doing, what division, what gender you're doing, and what are those rules.
Yeah, particularly when it comes to bathroom breaks and medical timeouts, because those tend to be a lot different. So thank you, Amy. Anything else, Amy, you'd like to add?
No,
That was really good. That was excellent. Thank you. Peter, go ahead.
I would echo the comments that our officiating has improved. I think as a national group, you see fewer regional differences. You still see some of that in some areas where we don't have as many trained officials, but now you'll see officials coming from other areas to Division I matches. They're flying them in, but it is a challenge to have the highest rated officials and NCAA capable officials at each site. I would say that the one thing that the one element that can be perturbing at times is an official who just wants to talk too much. And I don't really want to talk with an official very much. I don't want them talking with my guy very much. I think we got to keep it really professional during the match. While I may have a comment to an official that I disagree with the call you just made, I'm going to leave it there and park it. But I'm going to let an official know that I don't think they made a particularly good call there, or they missed a call, or their judgment was, I had a different view of what they just did, but I don't know if a commentary from them, either to me or to my player, that is outside of the boundaries of that particular conversation is appropriate and professional. So the most professional officials I work with they keep it about the match, they keep it about the line calls. We may disagree in a couple of places. We do so mostly respectfully, and that's great. And they don't get into a whole conversation with my player about something that they shouldn't really be touching.
Right. So professional courtesy, beginning of the match, maybe one sentence, coach, how, if you say, hello, coach, how you doing? And then leave it at that. So great. Well, anything else, Peter, on this one?
No, I think thanks for giving us an opportunity to kind of share it from the coach's perspective. We all, as coaches, we all know how tough it is to be an official, because it's just not the easiest job in the world. And especially with video review going on in the background now as well, you guys are, the officials are under a tremendous amount of pressure to get it right, which I think has also helped increase the level and the quality of officiating collegially around the country.
Great. Well, thank you. Anthony, any we got about 3 or 4 more minutes. Any other questions or?
No, I just want to thank all 3 coaches. I'm going to use snippets of this in our next training certification classes, because Darren and I did not pre-screen the answers, but it is amazing to me how much their answers echoed our curriculum. So I thank all 3 coaches for their time and for their efforts today.
Yeah,
Okay,
thanks for having us.
Yeah,
great.
thank
Well,
you.
if you could, we're gonna just stay on 1 minute. Kim Bonk had her hand up. Kim, I'm gonna go to you if you have a question. Kim? Okay. And the other one was Mike Stanrod. Mike? Mike, I've unmuted you. Okay, well, they're not able to hear us. So really appreciate everyone jumping on today. This was a full house, 75 people. And thank you so much, Amy, Allison, and Peter, for helping us improve our community. It was great. This was something that I've been trying to do for a couple of years. Hopefully we can make this maybe an annual thing with various coaches around the country in various divisions. So thank you so much. Anthony, thanks for moderating this, and everybody have a great rest of your day. This will be on the ITA Officials YouTube channel maybe as early as tomorrow. Courtney will send out a note. If you have any follow-up questions, feel free to send that to myself or Anthony. Have a great rest of your afternoon.
Thank you.
Thanks,
Thank you.
Darren.
Thank you, guys.
I don't know how you stop it.